You want to be a pro bodybuilder. Do you know or have any idea what it actually takes? What's the process? How do you get there? What organization? What path do you take, etc.? We are going to dig into the fine print today and go over all the logistical things that it takes to turn pro as a bodybuilder in a few different organizations. It has the potential to play off a little bit like reading the fine print of an iTunes end-user license agreement, but we're going to try and spice it up a little bit more than that, and there's some good information here. We're going to dive into that and a couple other things, and let's get started now. This is the Drop Set, episode 248. Let's hit it. Hey everybody, Darren Starr here, owner and coach at 5 Star Physique. That's where I am right now. I've been a full-time online coach for coming up on 15 years, and keep in mind now, as of today, mark the tape, we are 8 years into this podcast right now. 8 freaking years. Holy cow. I'm officially labeling the Drop Set a gossip-free and bro science-free zone. It has been for the most part, but now it's official. There's got to be some kind of a stamp of approval. If I'm not super lazy in editing, I might put in a graphic or a sound effect or something like that just to make it like feel official. My goal here is pretty simple. I want to educate, inform, and just have a discussion about everything related to bodybuilding. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to try to avoid taking ourselves too seriously in the process. All right. So thank you for listening and or watching on YouTube. It's good to have you here. Good to have you here. If you are listening like on iTunes and you want to leave a review, that would be awesome. And I will even read some reviews in the future, like this one that came in recently. Where did it go? And it just goes to show you, like, this is not a good review. I'm just saying, it is a 1-star review. So please don't leave these. But nonetheless, so the guy says some name that's not a real name. The podcast could be great, but the guy just complains mostly about former clients and gyms he has quit. His ADHD must not be medicated because he goes off on a lot of tangents. Does a lot of plugs for his other businesses, so I wonder how much coaching and bodybuilding he actually does. Okay, so there's a lot of... I mean, I think this guy probably heard one episode and just said, yeah, okay. And if it's not for him, that's fine. Don't listen to more, by all means. Because I do go off on a lot of tangents. It's kind of my brand, realistically. The whole ADHD must not be medicated, like cheap shot, buddy, because you don't know what kind of issues people might be dealing with. So take that, shove it. Do I complain about former clients and gyms I have quit? I do complain about gyms. I have not quit gyms. I just complain about gyms that I go to, nitpick there. Former clients, I mean, I tell stories about former clients because I think there's things to learn about. Let me tell you, there are a lot of complaints I could lodge about former clients, right? But that would just be boring. And the airing of grievances, we're going to save that for Festivus. That's not what we're doing here. So plugs for other businesses. What other businesses do I have? Like, everything is an extension of 5 Star. Outside of Sketchy Studios, which is where I sit right now, where I record, which is music and video production, of which I am my only client. So I'm not sure if he was listening to the right podcast or not. It kind of sounds like it, but also, like, you know, there's some validity in some of that criticism. Like, it is kind of disjointed. It is kind of unorganized. And so I kind of took some of what he was saying there and figured, like, hey, you know, I can probably structure this a little better. And you've probably noticed that over the past handful of episodes here. So just applying a little bit more structure to things and hopefully a little less rambling and a little easier to listen to, I kind of hope. So at any rate, if you're on iTunes, please leave a kinder review than that. I would appreciate it. Give me a star rating wherever you can. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave a comment with questions. I had a comment on the last podcast episode from somebody saying, hey, I would love it if you dig in or do a video on progressive overload and like how you go about logging things, and also like the decision making in like deciding when you need to go heavier, if you're going heavy enough. And so that is actually, it was funny because as I got that comment, I was actually in the middle of outlining that exact video. So that will be getting recorded in the next week or so and then published in due time. So, okay. Is that all of the formalities are out of the way, I think? 5starphysique.com. Check that out. Coaching, workout programs, podcast archive is up there as well. Merch, swag, whatever. Check it out. So let's dig in here. In our first segment today, we're going to talk about the road to pro, with the caveat that this is the USA version. Now, I have a lot of notes on this because I wanted to give out some details, and there's no way I could remember all this crap because a lot of this stuff just changes on a regular basis. Some of the notes in here and details are very arbitrary, so leave your notepad at home and just turn on your ears and listen, because the idea is not necessarily all of the specific numbers that I'm going to toss out here, but the idea is more about the process and the general concept of qualifying and what the process is like across various organizations, because it can be very different. There's also an alphabet soup of acronyms to kind of work your way through. So we're going to do that here. So we're going to start with the NPC, and it's worth noting here. Let's back up a second. Why am I doing this subject? Because I hear from a lot of people who are starting their bodybuilding journey and haven't even competed a show yet, but they know that they want to turn pro. And the thing is, like, you have to understand the path of how that works before you can really even start. So there are considerations to make before you even do your first show, thinking about what path you want to take, etc. It's also worth a very quick conversation here about why might you want to turn pro? Because a lot of people have this idea that when you turn pro, suddenly this becomes a money-making venture or something like that. Let's be clear. Competing in bodybuilding is a way to spend money, not make it. Like, nobody's getting rich as a competitor unless you are one of like the top 5 or 10 people in the world, right? Which I can safely say you are not, because I think I know who those people are, and I don't think any of them are podcast listeners. So that's the thing. It's like the people who earn a living as a competitive bodybuilder, you know who all those people are. So just look at the prize money that gets handed out, like the last episode. So let's just talk women, right? Got a lot of feedback on the Arnold Classic prize money stuff. So all of which was, not shocking, but most of it was in agreement with me, because I think we can all agree it's a big problem, right? But Francielle, is it Francielli or Francielle? I don't know. Francielle just seems right to me, so I'm going with that. She won wellness and won $7,000 at the second most prestigious show in the world. Think she's living high on the hog with that? Give me a break. And she's the top wellness competitor in the world, won the Olympia 3 times. She ain't living off her prize money. I don't know what the prize money is that she would win at the Olympia, but it's not enough that she's going to live comfortably off that, right? So now there are other things. There are supplement deals, sure, and sponsorships, etc. That's a very real thing. Still, like the people who can earn a living off of that, you're in the very, very, very top tier. How many pros are not in that tier? Almost all of them. So the thought that you're going to earn a pro card and suddenly all these avenues are going to open up, no, that's just not going to happen. Now, it can, through the process of earning your pro card. The thing that you want to do is be making connections with people, get known in the industry, become, I will use this word and I don't use it lightly, become an influencer, because bodybuilders who are influencers can make money and potentially make a living off of that. Just by competing and doing shows, no. But you have to have some kind of social influence. If you are a pro, are supplement companies going to come knocking down your door with lucrative offers? No. However, look at Sam Sulek. Has the dude even competed yet? I don't know. I don't think so. But clearly he has a future in front of him. Dude is already making bank because he is a social media celebrity. And you don't have to have success as a competitor. There's a lot of non-competitors who are very successful in this industry, just like being a fitness influencer. So it's not about the success that you bring; it's about the brand that you generate, and your brand is really, above all else, your personality. So, which is why I always say, like, I don't really know what my brand is because I don't really have much of a personality. So, cheap shot. So anyway, let's talk NPC to start with. Let's back up again. Eventually we're going to get started, I promise. The first thing that you have to decide is make some kind of initial decision as far as what path you want to go, as far as a drug-tested organization or a non-tested organization. Depending on certain factors, this may be a very obvious decision. Like, oh yeah, we're going to go untested. We're going to go NPC. Or you might want to go OCB route, INBA, something like that. But also, like, plenty of natural competitors compete in the NPC as well, just because it's a bigger organization. It carries more prestige with it. Certainly, you're going to have a harder path doing that, just because the competition will not be fair. It is possible to turn pro through the NPC, but it's difficult. And if you want to do that in, like, classic physique or even men's physique, good luck. Again, it's not impossible, but you have to be among the genetically elite for that to even have a prayer. So let's talk NPC to start. NPC is the amateur organization. You rise through the ranks in the NPC. You earn a pro card with the IFBB, which is the affiliate organization for the NPC. One criteria here for the NPC is that you have to be a U.S. citizen, which is interesting. I'm not sure if there might be exemptions for, they do have a show that is the North Americans, which includes a lot of Canadians, so I'm assuming there's probably an exemption there. But the NPC rules say for all of their national qualifiers, national level shows, that you must be a U.S. citizen. Interesting. So, the way it works is you compete in the smallest of shows first, stuff that's local to you, hometown, within a couple hours of a hometown, hopefully, something like that. This would be called a local or perhaps a regional show. Now, you have to compete in the open class in order to be eligible to earn a national qualification. And you have to finish high enough as well. So open class means open to everybody. So quick primer on this, you've got within every category. So a category would be bodybuilding, classic physique, men's physique, fitness, figure, wellness, women's bodybuilding, bikini. I left something out, whatever. That would be the category or the division, if you will. Within that, there are classes. So within classic physique, for example, you're going to have true novice. That's for first-time competitors only. You only get one chance to compete as a true novice. Then it's novice, and you can compete there until you break your novice qualification by doing too well, and then you have to compete in the open class. Or if you're old enough, you can compete in an age-restricted or master's class, and you can do that all the time. So you can go in your first show. You can compete true novice, novice, open, and masters all in your first show if you wanted to. Third show, true novice goes away. Now you can compete in novice, open, or masters. So then let's say you win your novice class. You can no longer compete as a novice. Now you can compete in open or masters, and if you're not old enough, then you're just an open. So that's kind of how the classes work. And then within all of those, there's, class A, B, C based on height or weight, etc. So it gets pretty granular there. So your class, let's say it's open classic physique C, which is what I would be. So open class, classic physique, height class C. If I were to finish first or second in that class, I would get a national qualification. From there, I'm eligible to compete in any national level NPC show. So I've raised up one tier. I've gone from the local level to the national level. That national qualification lasts typically for a year. Typically. It used to be 2 years. Actually, that's one point. I'm not sure how long that lasts. Let's dig in on the fine print on that later. And so you have your national qualification, you compete at a national level show. Now, all of those national level shows, this is like USAs, nationals, junior USAs, junior nationals, teen collegiate masters, universe, masters USA, masters universe, North Americans, might be one more. All of those hand out pro cards. Now, the trick here is that the number of pro cards that those shows hand out is very arbitrary based on each category. So if we look at, I saved the link in here. Let's just look at, this is the Junior USAs. And this is from, let's take a look at, for some reason, 2021 is pulling up here. Let's pull up 2023. And we're going to see how many pro cards were handed out in each category here. So men's bodybuilding had, they don't explicitly say that they had any. They have an overall winner. It does not note that the overall winner won his pro card. Interesting. Not sure about that. Figure handed out 3 pro cards, and they had like a class A, B, C, D, E, and F. So they had 7 classes. Not all of your class winners won pro cards. So the class winners all compete in an overall, and for some reason they decided they were going to hand out 3 pro cards to figure. Why? Probably roll the dice. Who knows? Bikini, they handed out 4. And again, there are, class A through H. I don't know how many that is, but it's a lot. 8, 9, whatever. So again, lots of class winners who did not earn a pro card. So don't think like if you're on stage at a national level show and you win your class, it's not automatic at that point. Like you've got to compete in the overall, and then here like the top 4 won the overall, and then the next 3 won their pro card. Going on down, fitness. We talked last week about fitness and the prize money for it. So in fitness, they awarded 1 pro card, which means if you competed in fitness at the 2023 Junior USAs, you had a 50-50 shot of earning a pro card because there were only 2 competitors. One of them turned pro. Okay. Men's physique only handed out 3 pro cards, the overall, and then 2 more. Very interesting. This had class A, B, C, D, E, and F. Classic physique had 4 classes, but they handed out, it looks like, 8 pro cards. So the most handed out in classic physique. Why do they hand out 8 for classic physique? Who the fuck knows? Like, absolutely no clue. Women's physique handed out 2. Women's wellness handed out 2. Why? Don't know. So it's kind of, I'm sure there's some kind of a guideline for this, but to me, just looking at it here, it seems extremely arbitrary as far as how many pro cards are handed out at a given show for a specific category. So to say it's weird, yeah. And also there's another interesting thing here. So if I wanted to be nationally qualified, Darren, this isn't a rule special for me, but if I wanted to be nationally qualified, I could find, what is the next show in the state of Tennessee? We're going to Google that right now. Tennessee bodybuilding. There we go. Oh, sorry, it's NPCTN now. Whatever. 2024 show schedule. Okay, so there is a show here. Memphis, May 11th. Okay, well, I'm not getting much out of that. It's only about 5 weeks before my show, 4 weeks before my show, actually. So, but if I wanted to, I could go compete in that show, even though I would not be stage ready. And after I compete in that show, I would be nationally qualified regardless of the outcome, because I am an old piece of shit, and therefore I would be automatically qualified for the Masters Nationals. This is a little known fact, but it clearly states that in the NPC rules for Masters Nationals, all you have to do is compete in a show last year or this year, and you qualify for this year's Masters Nationals. There's no criteria for placement or anything like that. You just have to show up on stage, and if you get your ass thoroughly trashed and you finished 11th out of 5, you're still nationally qualified. Seems a little weird, but I don't know. Why do they do that? It probably has to do with like historical attendance at Masters Nationals. They weren't getting enough people who were qualifying, or enough people who were qualifying weren't showing up, so they probably lowered the qualification standards, I would assume. I don't know. I'm making a guess on that one. So that's how it works in the NPC. You rise through the ranks, so you start at the local or regional level. You then graduate to the national level by earning a national qualification from down here, which takes you up here. And then if you finish high enough, again, that is an arbitrarily defined term, then you can earn a pro card and compete in the IFBB. So that is the path. Now, another organization here. Let's talk about the OCB, which is probably the largest amateur organization, just as far as like their coverage over the country. A lot of these other organizations like the INBA, the INBF, they're a little bit more regional. They have pockets of the country where they just don't have promoters, so you won't find shows in certain areas. So you want to check out websites for all these places. If you are looking to do a drug tested show, search thoroughly, or have your coach search thoroughly for you to make sure that they're not leaving any stone unturned and you're not missing some options that might be close to you at the right time and might be a good show. There are other organizations that we're not going to get into, like UFE, WBFF, which is really kind of a joke of an organization, really. I don't consider it a serious bodybuilding organization. And NGA, et cetera. We're going to talk about OCB just on the amateur side of things here. OCB, INBA, and INBF. So OCB is kind of nice because whether you're a pro or an amateur, you're in the OCB. They don't change the acronym, thank God. They're the only organization like that, except for NGA, I think, is the same. So now, there's some notes here. First of all, the OCB does not have quite such a convoluted process. You can, in the OCB, win a pro card in your first show. In the NPC, the absolute best you could do is to win a pro card in your second show, because you have to, at your first show, earn a national qualification and then be good enough to be competitive at the national level and earn a pro card in show number 2. That is really rare. It happens. I know people who have done that. It is rare. It takes a good combination of extreme work ethic to jump into it and just like win your first show and then have your second show be at the national level and win that as well. That's a big hurdle. So you have to have extreme work ethic, super hard worker, great genetics, and a great team behind you. You have to have all those things realistically. So that's really like an elite level thing. And then there's also always the possibility that like, yeah, and then what if at that point you've tapped out on your potential and it's, you have a difficult time being competitive at the pro level? Well, you got time, right? You didn't spend a lot of your competitive career toiling around in the amateur ranks. So in the OCB, you can absolutely turn pro in your first show. I have had clients do this before. Now, I have to say, fundamentally, I think that is weak sauce. Anything where you can do it once and then be deemed a professional, I think is a joke. It just does not strike me as being genuine. I have had clients, who have gone pro in their first show and really still don't know anything about bodybuilding. Which, it's not a question of who you know or how much you know. It's a question of how you look on stage. But like not really even, understanding how to go through a prep fully, like successfully the right way, like managing things like, emotional fluctuations and stress during prep. Like, I think those are the things that make somebody a pro, not a piece of paper. That being said, if somebody gets up on stage and they're better than everybody else, then that you can turn pro in your first show. I just fundamentally disagree with the structure of that. I think with the NPC, it's definitely more earned. There's a process that's involved. Now, the standards for the OCB are, they let me see if I can digest this correctly here. OCB pro cards are awarded for open competitors. There are also Masters Pro cards. So you can be a Masters OCB Pro, or they probably call it an OCB Masters Pro. It's 35 plus for women, 40 plus for men. I do not believe they differentiate beyond that. Like, you can't be an OCB Masters Pro 50 plus. Like, you're just a Masters Pro, but the requirement for that for a guy is you're 40 or over, and for women it's 35 or over. Now, the thing is, with this is where it starts to get interesting, because as we could see with fitness at the 2023 Junior Nats, there were 2 competitors, one I think they were in different classes even. I closed it, so I don't have it up here. And they each won their class, and one of them won a pro card. So in the OCB and in most natural organizations, you cannot be the only person in your class and win a pro card. Probably because there is no qualification. Like with an NPC national level show, you have to earn a qualification to get there. So at that point, they're assuming that you've hit a certain threshold at least. That is not always the case, but they're making that assumption. Here, if you are in men's physique, classic physique, figure, wellness, or bikini, there have to be a minimum of 5 people in your class, or else the class winner is not eligible to win a pro card, because the class would not be deemed competitive enough, if that makes sense. So if you are in men's physique and you go to an OCB show and I killed this prep, I'm going to earn my pro card, and there's only 3 people in your class, guess what? Nobody's earning a pro card. There aren't enough people in your class, which that kind of sucks, because that is completely out of your control. Like, you could show up and have the best physique that has ever graced an OCB stage, but if there aren't enough people in your class, you aren't winning a pro card. For men's bodybuilding and women's physique, it's a 3-person minimum, just because those classes are typically going to be a little smaller, have fewer competitors, so they lower the threshold to 3. And then for masters categories for women 35 plus or men 40 plus, it's 3 as well. And then there was another caveat here. If you win a pro qualifying placement in a masters category, so you earn your pro card, you're only eligible for masters pro shows. So you cannot compete as like an open pro in the OCB if you have a masters pro card. So you could earn 2 pro cards. You could have a regular one and a masters one. I don't know why you would want to do both. I don't know. They'd probably make you pay annual dues for both of those as well. So if you win an open pro card, however, this is where they kind of do right. So you compete in like open men's physique, but you happen to be a guy who's 42 years old. But you win your pro card there, so you've won your open men's physique pro card on the OCB. You can still compete in pro masters categories because you hit the age requirement, even though you don't have a masters pro card. So the open pro card kind of supersedes that, if that makes sense. So OCB starts to get a little trickier. Now, the INBA, which is the amateur organization, and then you graduate to be the PNBA pro. The process here is enter the show. You have to win the overall, or sometimes there isn't an overall because there aren't enough classes or something like that. And so if overall is not an option, there must be 2 or more in the open or masters category. So a minimum of 2 per class. And then the first place winner in that category receives the pro qualification at promoter's discretion. What does that mean? I think it means if the promoter thinks like, yeah, you won, but you still kind of suck, you're not a pro, I think they can deny it to you, which that would be kind of shitty, but I'm sure it's happened. And then also PNBA pro qualification may also be awarded by acknowledgement of the INBA PNBA world president, which seems to me that this person can just be a kingmaker and decide that somebody is a pro for whatever reason. Weird. Okay. INBF. This is another organization, and this is the one that's really like the most draconian, I think. So INBF, you then graduate to be a WNBF pro. So there have to be a minimum of 8 or 5 competitors in your category. So a minimum of 8 for bikini, figure, men's bodybuilding, and men's physique. And a minimum of 5 for women's fit body, women's bodybuilding, and all masters categories. Note, there is no classic physique in the INBF. So there is no wellness either. There is no fitness. Fit body is going to be more like women's physique kind of thing. I think the INBF does that with heels too. I'm not totally sure on that one. But, so either at 8 or 5. Now, where it gets really shitty here is if there are 8 people, and they say this specifically. It's wild. They say no exceptions, and they give this example and say, yes, this would not count. If there are 8 people signed up for your class, and one of those persons gets food poisoning the night before and has to bow out of the show, there are no longer 8 people in your class. The winner does not earn a pro card. It's like, that's kind of shitty. Because then everybody hates that person now too, even though it's not their fault. Like, has that ever happened? I don't know, probably. But God, I'd be pissed. It's just, that seems lame to me. So, there is also, I think there was a note in here, like these last organizations, OCB, INBA, INBF, are all drug-tested organizations. And I believe the INBF also said that anyone who qualifies for a pro card has to take another drug test immediately after the show, which seems, again, a little draconian, a little redundant. And I think it was, I can't remember which of these it was, but I thought it was weird. It was either the INBA or the INBF that said, like, hey, you become pro card eligible, but we're not going to force you to turn pro. So if you qualify for a pro card, but you don't purchase said pro card, you can continue to compete as an amateur for as long as you want, which seems a little bottom feeder-ish to me. I don't really dig that. I think that's kind of stupid. I think, once you earn a pro card, I think whether you go that route or not, I don't think you can really compete as an amateur anymore. And their thing was like, no, you decide when you turn pro. Like, isn't that what the judges are for? Like, they're there to tell you, like, yeah, you're a pro, you qualify for this, good. Whether or not you want to pay for it or not, whatever, but you can't compete as an amateur anymore. I think that would be fair. A lot of these organizations also have exclusivity contracts, which I don't know how you enforce that necessarily. Another thing that I thought was funny, if you go right now to sign up for NPC Junior USAs, Junior Nats, whichever one is in Chattanooga, I don't remember. I've never been able to. I used to know, like, back when they were in Charleston and Chicago consistently, I used to be able to keep them separated, and now I can't. Like, that part of my brain is just flown out. I don't remember anymore. But you can go and sign up right now, and it does not ask you how you qualify for that. But it does say, like, your NPC card is, NPC membership number is double-checked and qualifications are double-checked when you check in. And I'm like, I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. Like, I just don't suspect that the NPC really has their act together that much. Now, I'm not going to be the guy who goes and signs up for it without a national qualification and tries to sneak in just to see. Because let's be clear, if you didn't earn that national qualification, you don't belong up on that stage. But still, it's like, I don't really trust that the NPC really has their act together quite that much. I could be wrong, but I'm suspicious of that. So anyway, that's it. That's the road to pro, the logistical version. Now, coming up in a future video, I'm going to talk about the behavioral things that go into going pro, and the kind of things that you have to do before you turn pro in order to actually get to that point and then be effective in that space. Quick time out here, and thanks again for watching. So podcasting is fun for me, but coaching is how I actually make a living. Being an online coach has been my exclusive full-time gig for coming up on 15 years now. Hard to believe that. If you're looking for a coach, either for competition prep or just to get in the best shape of your life, you can check out 5starphysique.com and click on coaching for details on the programs that I offer. Quick version here. I get a ton of information up front to create a starting plan, and then we check in weekly to adjust that as we go based on your specific goal and the timeline involved. There's loads of detail up on the website, so I'll keep this short. Just check out 5starphysique.com for details. The link is in the description below. I do take on a limited number of clients and want to have a little bit of back and forth before starting up just to make sure that we're a good fit. So check out the website, read up, and hit the contact button to reach out to me directly. Okay, back to it. Okay, switching gears. Let's talk about the problem with macros. Isn't that a movie or something? Be a pretty bad movie. It's just a bunch of people walking around, logging food in MyFitnessPal, necks craned down, buried in their phones for the whole movie. There's no dialogue. It's just food logging. Occasionally somebody eats something, then realizes, shit, I logged it wrong. Damn it. That's like considered character development. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to flesh that script out any further. I think it's probably dead on the vine. So the biggest problem with macros, there are several. You could say, like, how could you screw up a macro-based program? And of course, the first and most obvious answer is you just don't hit the targets accurately, or you think you do, but you have numerical errors or math errors or something like that. And of course, that's a big problem. The real problem, though, is an innocent mistake that a lot of people make. They don't even know about it, and that is the fact that the apps that we use to rely on this stuff, the food databases in these apps are not wholly accurate. Not accurate enough, at least, for us to rely on consistently to give us, quality data and reasonably accurate information. So there's just a lot of slop in these databases, and even Cronometer. So I'm talking specifically about MyFitnessPal, but also Cronometer, which is considered a much higher standard and actually, thank God for this, actually lists the source of their information with each entry as well. So the common sources for Cronometer are the NCCDB, I had to write this down, Nutrition Coordinating Center for Food and Nutrient Database. It seems like that acronym is missing a couple letters. Like, shouldn't it be NCCFND? I don't know. Or the USDA. So it depends on the source. The other thing here is the USDA, great, very reliable source of nutritional data. Except I looked up some foods, and I didn't save the numbers, and I wouldn't bore you with the details anyway, in Cronometer that listed the USDA as a source. And then I pulled up the USD food database website, which is at something USDA.gov. Something, I don't know, USDA food database. I go here all the time. Foot database. That would be weird if the USDA kept a foot database on everything. Bunch of foot fetishist pics. FDC, Food Data Central, fdc.nal.usda.gov. So you go here and you type in, like, I'm going to type in chicken breast cooked. I tried to get cute, not look at my fingers when I typed. It didn't work well. And when this comes up, the first thing you need to do is click on the tab up at the top that says SR Legacy Foods, because this is where you're going to find the most reliable information. So now I said specifically chicken breast cooked. So now it has chicken breast tenders, breaded, cooked, microwaved. That's all one entry. Nope, don't want that. Chicken, broilers or fryers, breast, meat and skin, cooked, roasted. No, meat and skin, cooked, stewed. We want skinless. Maybe I should just change it so it says skinless as well. We'll just keep looking here. Meat only, chicken, broilers or fryers, breast, meat only, cooked, roasted, or stewed. Let's see if there's a difference. See if there's a difference between these two. So this is per 100 grams, which is 4 ounces. No, 3.5 ounces. So they're giving me numbers here. I'm just going to, everything that I always will spit out in terms of macros is always going to be in the order: proteins, carbs, fats. So this is 31.03.5, and that's for roasted. If we go stewed, it's 29.03. Seems a little weird that how you cook it changes the protein that much. Either way, both of those numbers are wrong. So I've gone through the ringer on this stuff. I mean, I've gone to this database before. I've taken averages of all these things and said, you know what? Here's what it is. And some of this is a little bit arbitrary, but also I was so sick of the inconsistency on this that I just had to arrive at a consensus amount, which is for chicken breast, every ounce of product is going to be 7 grams of protein. And so if I see stuff that's too far off from that, I get very suspicious and I'm going to look for a different database entry. It should also be very low in fat, like 2 grams for a 4-ounce serving. 3 for a 3.5-ounce serving, that seems a little high to me. It's not really a huge problem, except when you multiply that over several hundred times over the course of a year or two, that error adds up. Boneless meat only, braised or grilled. Okay, so looking here, yep, pretty much the same numbers, 32.03. And then if that was for braised, if we go grilled, we're now at 31.03. So the numbers are all pretty consistent. So if you get something in like the 28 to 30 range for a 4-ounce portion, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Cronometer, though, I found something where they were listing like 35 grams of protein, and this was with the USDA food source database. And, you know, looking through all these products, there's 15 of them here. If I go to this one back on the main tab, this, one that's listed as foundational foods, I don't think it matched that either. No, these numbers aren't correct. So I don't have any reference for their source. Like, I can't find the specific source that they were listing in their app. And so the problem is then you just get into this mode where all you're doing is trusting and saying like, well, I hope this is right. And that's for the ones that actually have a legitimate source attributed to them. So if you use one of those USDA food database entries or an NCCDB database entry, then you're probably going to be okay. Like, your numbers might be off, but they'll be consistently off at least. And so let's say you log something that is 35 grams of protein when it's really 28. So you're shortchanging yourself 7 grams of protein. Now let's say you shortchange yourself 7 grams of protein twice a day. So now you're 14 grams under your daily allowance, or the macro target that's been set, that you've set or that your coach has set. Well, you're consistently under by 14 grams, so you're still at least precise and stable. And so there's something that can be done for that. And then you can make a determination, although it would be hard to judge the outcome in program of a difference of 15 grams of protein. But if I suspected somebody was underdoing it on protein, well, I would just increase their target by 15 grams. Again, that's really kind of nitpicking and would require a level of clairvoyance that is beyond that of most human beings. But I see all kinds of things where people will log like a 5-ounce portion of chicken and it says it has 49 grams of protein. I'm like, that is so far off base. Like that's a 15-gram discrepancy. Like we got to fix that. And MyFitnessPal is the most common source of entries like this because a lot of this stuff is user sourced. Like people can plug in their own data, their own foods, and they get entered into the database, and then other people can find those. You'll find fast food entries that are masquerading as real food commodities. Like, somebody will log a chicken patty from a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich or something like that. And then somebody ends up using that as their stock, chicken entry in the database. And it's just completely incorrect because the stuff that came off of Chick-fil-A's website was wrong or something like that. So there's just so much stuff. And also like a lot of the things that come from restaurants are not tagged as such. And so you have to kind of infer a little bit. Like I found, there was an entry that I found once for, what was it? It was like zucchini squash, something like that. And it had, I think for a cup, it was like 300 calories. So clearly it's like drenched in oil and butter and probably has breading all over it as well. And so if somebody's having some zucchini, they just chop it up at home, they stick it in an air fryer or something like that. Cool, awesome. And then they log it 300 calories. It should be like 40 calories. So that's clearly a massive error. That's so far out of spec as to be ridiculous. Like that's a problem. So that's something that somebody would order at a restaurant. Like your 300 calorie portion of zucchini squash is just loaded in fat and just swimming in butter. But it's not tagged as such. It just looks like, and so unless you know to look into the numbers and be like, yeah, why does this have 26 grams of fat? It's a vegetable. Mine doesn't have 26 grams of fat. You're using the wrong entry, but it's not tagged as a restaurant entry necessarily. So this is the key problem with macros, is just the amount of inaccuracy that can be brought in accidentally just because of shitty database entries. So what this means, what the solution here is that you have to have a really good bullshit detector, which comes down to having some idea of what the value of a food is supposed to be. And if you don't, you can always go back to the USDA database for a reasonable estimation. Like here, if you're like, you pull up that entry and you're like, why does this zucchini show up as 300 calories per cup? That doesn't make any sense. What's it supposed to be? So you go here and you type in zucchini. Okay, we go to SR Legacy Foods. Squash, raw, canned, unprepared, boiled, drained, with or without salt, cooked, boiled, drained, without salt. Let's do that. Okay, sure. Awesome. So it says per 100 grams, what if we just do a cup? 38 calories. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Yep. Yeah, figure pretty much any kind of non-starchy veg should be about 40 calories per cup, give or take. Some might be less than that, like mushrooms, onions, bell pepper is going to be way less than that. But most of your standard like bodybuilding veggies, so this is going to be anything cruciferous, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, zucchinis, green beans, snap peas, asparagus, they're all going to be around the neighborhood of 40 calories per cup. So you can use certain things just as a gut check there. But also like the USDA food database. Just go to Google, USDA food database, type it in, click the link, search, hit the legacy foods tab, check for results that match how you're preparing it. And usually the preparation method, whether it's like baked, broiled, grilled, what isn't going to introduce that much difference. So, and here you can get an idea. So this is how you kind of run it through some kind of a bullshit detector. Or if you have a coach and they're good and you have questions about it, they'll be able to do a macro audit for you and look through your logs and be like, yes, no, what is this? Huh? Wait, why are you eating this? What? This portion's off. Your meal composition is all wrong. Like, we got to fix some of this stuff. The first thing that I do when I request a macro audit from a client is just to go and look for math errors. Database entries, or like if some people do it by hand, they may be multiplying things wrong. Like, this is the correct number per ounce. I'm doing 4 ounces. Your math here is wrong. Let's fix that, etc. So the very first thing and the most important thing that I'm looking for is math errors. And then beyond that, I'm looking at nutrient distribution, and not too much beyond that. Like, I don't really care about food selection as long as your stomach is happy with everything. If it seems obvious that you're really deficient in some micronutrients, I might point it out. But otherwise, those are the things that matter the most, for sure. Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying this episode. Just wanted to take a quick time out to tell you about a promotion I have going on now for my workout programs at 5starphysique.com. I have around 50 programs available as of right now. These are comprehensive workout splits for all people, goals, and phases. You can search by volume, general difficulty level, even the number of supersets involved, so you don't end up with something that you can't properly execute because your gym is just too damn busy when you go to train. All of these programs do include full video demonstration playlists for each day, narrated by yours truly, so you know exactly what to focus on and what to watch out for on every move. These are ideal for all skill levels. You can use the promo code DROPSET, one word, at checkout to save $10 on your first program. Link is in the description below, or check out 5starphysique.com and click on workout programs. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, moving right along. Final segment here. This comes from an YouTube comment from at TrevorGage89. This was in response to the last prep vlog that I did at 13 weeks out. Those are dropped every Monday on YouTube. You can certainly go and check those out if you like. YouTube watchers, I'll put a card up here. He says, I like your workout split. I think I'm going to try it out. Right now, I have chest and back on the same day, and I find it kind of overwhelming to try to fit all that in within a reasonable time. That's fair. And so I made a comment back to him. A lot of it just depends on strengths and weaknesses and how you pair things together. And he said, that's good to know. I suppose it's now a question for your Q&A, workout splits, and what if all of your areas are weak? As in you're still in beginner in terms of putting on muscle mass. So I figured it would be good to just have a quick little conversation about how to build the right split from the ground up. And part of this is going to rely on a little bit of aesthetic analysis. But before we even get to that, we have to discuss need versus want. And which category do you fall into as being the most dominant one in this conversation? If you're a competitor, it's a needs analysis, period, end of discussion. What do you need? If you're not a competitor, the wants come into play. Because as a competitor, you might say like, I want big biceps. I'm like, well, too bad, because your legs are shit and they need to come up. That's where we're going to spend our time. Doesn't have anything to do with what you want. It has everything to do with what you need, unless you don't want to continue to, do better as a competitor. The competitors that don't do well are the ones that focus on what they want rather than what the judges tell them that they need when they ask for feedback. So if you're in the wants category, then you can more or less do what you want. I would not neglect anything, and I would still be mindful of weaknesses. And personally, just because I'm kind of wired this way, I would always be programmed to just kind of try to bring those weaknesses up. So if I didn't really want to work legs, I didn't care if they were small, still going to hit them once a week. Honestly, if they're really overpowered by everything else, probably should hit them twice a week, realistically. So break things up a little bit. So really do like a quad dominant workout and then like a glute ham dominant workout. So it's not quite such a, huge lift. Like 2 leg days that are of low to reasonable volume can be much easier, much more effective, and much more appealing than 1 leg day that's higher volume because you're trying to train everything lower body in one day. So what we would do here is there should be a good needs analysis done, I think, for everybody. If you're a non-competitor, you still want to factor this in, but you can apply some wants to it as well. For sake of argument here, we're going to go with from this point on, we're going to talk about a competitor's needs analysis. So we'll use me as an example, and to keep this fair, to me, we won't bring up visuals. I was going to say to keep it fair to audio-only listeners, we won't bring up visuals, but let's keep it fair to me as well, please. We don't need to bring up my pictures. If you want to see them, they're in the vlog every week. So you can see how it's like, yeah, okay, he's getting better, but he's still fat. he's still got some problems. So I'm working on it, okay? Chill out. Leave your shade at the door, please. So for me, like if I were to objectively look at my own physique, which to this date, it is March 14th, 2024, I've never actually been able to do that, look at myself objectively. One of these days it's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. I always look at myself very unfairly. But I think any fair observer of my pics, if you've seen them before, would say like, yeah, the area of greatest importance is legs. They need to come up. So that's the top priority. Now legs is really like, 5 distinct muscle groups. You got glutes, hamstrings, quads, adductors, we're going to count separately, and calves. So of those 5 muscle groups, which ones are the priority? I would say it kind of depends. Like, I feel like I have good detail in my hamstrings, but they don't really have, like, on the side poses, they don't really have any depth or drop to them. So that's a problem. So more hamstring size, volume would be good. The quads, again, have decent separation to them when I get leaner, but they just lack sweep. Adductors, they're coming up, but they're not impressive. Glutes, I have poorly trained for most of my life. Calves, I have. Check. So that's one. That's one. The other 4, definite weaknesses. Above the waist. Back. I used to think that back was my biggest weakness. My former coach, Chrissy, she would make the argument that back was a strength of mine. And before she passed, she was kind of coming around to convincing me of that. Like, she was trying to fight that fight, and she'd be like, no, look, here, this. It's just everything at that point was off season, so everything just looked super soft, and so it was really hard for me to see it. I still don't really see it, but I'm kind of seeing, like, okay, I think I get what she was looking at here. I'm still not convinced she was right, but I kind of see where she was getting at. Like, okay, all right. Shoulders, I feel, are okay, but I also feel it's impossible for them to get too big. Like, you can have giant delts, and is that really going to cause a problem? I don't think so. Not really. Chest, I feel, is fine, and also arms, I feel, are fine. So there's a few. Does that mean they're big enough? No, but just proportionately to everything else, like, they're not weak. So chest, kind of, shoulders, arms, okay-ish. Back and legs are the priority as far as I'm concerned. Back, just because, again, like, I'm not super convinced that it's not a weakness, but even so, like, more depth and detail in the back is not going to hurt. Now we have to consider what phase you're in. So if you are in a cutting phase, the goal is to preserve muscle. So you have to hit everything with a reasonable amount of volume to preserve tissue on a deficit. So you can't play favorites too much. But you want to hit everything with, like, at least 8 sets per week. I hear about people all the time who, if they're in wellness and super focused on lower body versus upper body, they might have, like, 1 upper body day per week. The thing is, like, that does need to be a fairly high volume session in order to give everything enough volume so you're not just dropping tissue, unless that's your goal. So giving each muscle group about 8 sets per week, that's 8 hard sets. That would work. Now, the way to do that, if you're trying to do it all in 1 upper body day, would be, first of all, it is going to be a longer day, and you'll want to superset or giant set everything. It doesn't have to be the most intensely crazy quality of all time. It's really more about hitting the volume thresholds and just making sure that the quality is sufficient. Like, it should feel hard, right? But also, it's like, well, why are you down to just 1 upper body day per week? Like, your legs still need to recover, and you can't throw infinite volume at them and expect them to recover. So unless you're training 3 days per week, maybe 4. Like, can we, with the right kind of programming, get in 3 quality leg days per week? Yeah, but we have to be really specific. Like, they're not going to be 3 comprehensive leg days per week, because then you'll end up doing 40 sets for all your leg muscle groups throughout the week, and there's no way on earth you're going to recover from that. You will go backwards, not forwards. So more is not more. More is more up to a point, but that point is much lower than people would tend to think. And at that point, you start to get diminishing returns, and then your performance starts to drop because you're just completely under-recovered. You're probably underfeeding yourself as well. So the time to really think about this is during a growth phase, because that's when you can really influence the long-term shape of your body. Rather than just trying to retain tissue, you can build more muscle during that time. So that's when split construction really starts to be more of an issue. I still wouldn't really neglect much of anything, but you can certainly give things a little less volume, just hit that minimum threshold. But also, like, how you count that also matters. Like, if you're going to do some pull-ups, well, that counts for back. Should that count for biceps as well? Maybe it counts as like 3/4 of a set for biceps. So, and this I stole blatantly from John Jewett, but I think he's onto something here, where he would come up with some kind of a scoring system for exercises. Like, it contributes this many sets to this muscle group, this many sets to this muscle group. Like, a set of pull-ups would be like, that we're going to call that a set for back and a set for biceps. Cool. All right. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't remember if that's exactly what he said. I wouldn't do it that way. I might count it as like half a set for biceps. Ideally, we would not work them at all because we're trying to work the back, right? But the biceps will be involved a little bit. So maybe we count that as half a set. Cool. So between that and maybe a couple of other back exercises, you're at the point where you're hitting biceps with 4 sets a week without hitting them directly. So then you just give them one exercise with 4 sets. There's your 8-set minimum. Awesome. You're good to go. Shove that to the side. So you can get kind of granular with this. And if the way that you've scored that ends up being like it's too low volume, like, oh man, biceps are dropping size or a performance is dropping, something like that, well, clearly you need to recalibrate your scoring system and maybe just not count those pull-ups or that row as a bicep exercise and say, no, we need to throw in another exercise with its own 4 sets, 2 isolation bicep movements, and go from there. So you always want to start with the priorities, figure out how many days per week you need to train, and figure out what your overall volume is going to be. I would say realistically somewhere in the 12 to 16 working sets per day is about the max that most people are going to get any kind of good efficacy out of. Beyond that, and again, hard sets, not total sets, hard sets, like hard working sets. So for example, if you do, this is a conversation that I had with Sherry Priami when I had her here to interview. Like her typical thing, what she said, like for a typical back day, I think was the example. And keep in mind, Olympia level competitor, no wallflower, right? She would do 2 working sets per exercise, but do about 6 exercises. 12 sets. But the thing is, like, those 2 working sets are hard as shit. So typically you're going to do a couple of warm-up or acclimation sets to arrive at that weight where both of those sets are going to be pretty much the same weight. It's not like we did that set, that was hard. Oh, okay, let's go up 15 pounds. Like, you don't have 15 pounds to go up unless you're pushing 1,500 pounds, in which case 15, you could probably do that, sure. But otherwise, like if you're doing 100 and then your next set you're going to do it 115 and those are your only 2 sets, I wouldn't say, I'd rather see those like 110 and 115, something like that. Like if you're only doing 2 exercises per set, they both need to be pretty much at your absolute max, and then you move on to do the next exercise. So that's 12 sets. That's plenty. The harder your sets are, the less volume that you need to get the job done, and so you can consider that as well. The other thing that I would say here is if you are doing multiple muscle groups in one workout, I would consider always placing the higher priority one first, so you hit that when you're fresh. So if you're going to do, chest as a priority, but you're going to pair arms with it, like I am. That's what I'm doing as well. So I would say of the 3 muscle groups that I'm hitting on that day, they're all strengths, which is why I put them all on the same day. So chest and arms, 3 muscle groups, it's a good bit of volume. Chest is the one that I think if anything is less of a strength, it's that. So I open with that, and then I superset arms after that. So that's pretty easy. Legs, I have something that's more of a quad focused day, but it still has one specific glute exercise on there. And then the other day is more hamstring and glute. Like there's really nothing super quad activated on that day. So definitely more of a posterior focus there. The back is kind of evenly split between lats and traps. A little bit more lat heavy realistically, just because, for me, like I'm missing some detail on that back shot as well, but I think if I get lean enough, it'll be there, it'll come out. But the lack of width, you can't fake. So I'm right now focusing more on width than on depth. And then what did I leave off? Shoulders. Shoulders I still have on. I have actually on their own day. Just because I want to take my time with it, because I do have this right shoulder impingement. And so I need to do a pretty extensive warm-up for that, and then I will do some warm-up sets on every exercise. So I just want to take a little bit more time with it to make sure that I can keep it feeling happy and productive. So prioritize your weaknesses, and if everything's weak, then nothing is a strength, but then nothing is a weakness, realistically. So you're a blank slate at that point. So just hit everything evenly. I would say by default, I would probably recommend a 6-session rotation where you do 3 on, 1 off. So it takes you 8 days to get through all 6 sessions. And a good default place to start is always push-pull legs. Because you'll hit push twice in an 8-day stretch, you'll hit pull twice in an 8-day stretch, and you'll hit legs twice in an 8-day stretch. Now, it should be 2 different push workouts, it should be 2 different pull workouts, and 2 different leg workouts. And I have programs like that available online. So those are probably the best things that I would consider to be a starting point for anybody who is not exactly sure where to start. And also, like, if you just need a proper needs analysis done, that's what a coach is for. So if you struggle with that, that's certainly something that I help people with. I do it all the time. So you can always just reach out to a professional, whether that's me or somebody else, and help you with that. Okay, so we talked about logistics and getting a pro card. We talked about problems with macros and also a little bit about split construction as well. So always welcoming your topics here. So you can call in 865-518-6569. Ask me a question. Look that up in the show notes, or it's on screen right now as well. You can leave a comment on YouTube. Reach out to me through the website, 5starphysique.com. You can read about coaching programs, workout programs. Check out the promo code that I talked about earlier in that little commercial that you all had to suffer through. Code drop set to save $10 on a workout program. Okay, that wraps up another episode, and thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please share it on social media and tag me on Instagram. I am at Darren_Starr. Also, please subscribe to the channel here if you haven't already, and feel free to check out any of those other videos that you see here as well. 5starphysique.com has details on everything that I have to offer, including contest prep coaching, body transformation coaching, workout programs, swag, and a whole lot more. Thanks again for listening, and I will catch y'all back here next week.